For many Lions fans, there is still a strong desire to add another cornerback. And as we inch closer to the draft, this one particular cornerback is becoming a hot interest for some people. But for me, I have some severe reservations about his ability to make it in the next level. And we're going to talk about it in today's episode. So stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are? And what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Lions fans, and welcome back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving in. And I'm going to just say this right now because it's going to be a little bit of a way to, allow me to get into this episode. You have no idea how many times I've tried to record this episode, at least a good dozen times, because I had to constantly think about how to get the opening right. Other things came up, so I'm kind of glad now that I've got this recording going. But anyway, here's the thing, folks. When we're talking about the Lions this offseason, we're talking about Lions fans, there has been, and I mean this, there has been a plethora, a bevy, an absolute just crap ton of potential ideas, propositions, and just pairings that people have come up with to try and make the Lions a better team. I mean, for crying out loud, it's almost like, the Matchmaker song on Fiddler on the Roof. For those of that actually watched that movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like, dude, we've had so many people try to match the Lions up with potential cornerbacks, it's kind of gotten a little bit funny in a kind of like a silly way. But some of the names that have been associated with the Lions, I thought actually had some merit. The problem was whether or not they were plausible. Like, is it possible that this could actually happen? Is it possible we actually could make this work? And what do I mean by this? We've had names that have been brought up throughout the entirety of the offseason. Such names like Jalen Johnson, L'Jarius Sneed. Those were names that were propped up very, very early as potential targets that the Lions could go after. Jalen Johnson, he went back to the Bears. Freaking, L'Jarius Sneed, he got tagged by the Chiefs. The Chiefs then traded him to the Titans. And then the Titans gave him a multi-million-dollar deal to stay with them. Then we started talking about other guys. We've talked about, hey, potentially the Lions could go out and trade for another cornerback, whether it's Greg Newsome, whether it's Patrick Surtain. And I mean, is it plausible? Yes, but it's not probable. The Lions have already made a trade for a cornerback in Carlton Davis. I don't see them making another trade for another one, especially when chances are to get Greg Newsome, you'd probably have to trade about the same amount to get him that you did for Carlton Davis. And for Patrick Surtain, you sure as hell would have to give up a lot more to get him. And I just don't think that that's Brad Holmes' strategy. I don't think he's going to continually give up draft picks to get other players. And then I know that there are other people that have said, well, maybe we could go out and get, Stephon Gilmore because his younger brother's on the roster. Other people have talked about Xavier Howard, which I brought up in a previous episode. The whole point is that, like I said, there have been multiple names that have been thrown out as possible matches that could work with the Lions or that the Lions could be interested in. But I'm going to just say this right now. I just don't realistically think that at this point the Lions are going to want to make a move in free agency or trade when it comes to this point. And the reason why I'm saying that is because, well, let's consider today. It's April 1st. The draft is literally in like 20-something days. At this point, NFL teams are not concerned about free agency. They're not concerned about trades. Unless it's like, oh my God, how could this trade possibly be available at this point? I don't think Brad Holmes is going to do something like that. Most NFL teams right now, they are focused almost 100% on the draft process. They are focused on top 30 visits. They are focused on going to schools. They are focused on getting as much information and as much personal time with these prospects to see who's the best fit for them. Which leads us into the conversation we're having right now. I know that at the start of this whole thing, when we started talking about prospects for cornerbacks, there were a lot of guys that I brought up, such as Kool-Aid McKinstry. I've talked about TJ Tampa. I've talked about Kyrie Jackson. I know some other people were high on Enos Rakestraw. Those are all guys that have been projected to be available at the bottom of the first round that the Lions could potentially go after. But this new guy that's come up is a guy from U of M, which a lot of my fans have been like pounding the table for. They have been praising his name, and that's Mike Sainristil from U of M. Hopefully I pronounced his name correctly. That's how I heard it pronounced. An announcer did it one time, so if he mispronounced it and I mispronounced it, I do apologize, but Sainristil is how I'm going to pronounce him in the episode, so just forewarning. Here's the thing, folks. When it comes to Mike Sainristil, I'm going to say this. I've watched some of the games. I've watched highlight films. I've watched highlight tapes. And I'll say this. Is he a bad cornerback? No, he's not. He definitely has things that I like about him. I love the fact that the guy is feisty. I love the fact that the guy is physical. There are things about his game I really enjoy. But, huge but, however, comma, the one thing about his game that I don't like is the one thing that, well, realistically, at this point, he has no control over. And that's his size. I'm sorry, I know that sounds to be very nitpicky. I know that sounds to be very short-sighted. But it's like, dude, we're talking about the cornerback position. And in today's NFL game, the way the game is played now, I'm sorry, wide receivers aren't getting smaller, folks. They're getting bigger. So it's like naturally, if the wide receivers are getting bigger, more physical, harder to push around, you don't want a smaller cornerback, you want a bigger cornerback. And for me, I look at Mike Sainristil and I'm like, yeah, the guy's feisty, the guy's physical. But at 5'9", barely over 180 pounds, you're not really going to be doing a whole lot for a wide receiver that's easily 3 to 4 inches taller than you for the average, and sometimes bigger than that. It's like, again, you're going to be trying to move this dude and you're not going to get very far. And again, this is why I do what I do. I back up everything I say with stats. I back up everything with comparison. I back up everything that I possibly can so that way you guys know I'm not just being this way for a certain reason. I've looked into the data. I've looked into the information so that way I have a comprehensive argument that doesn't just look like I'm being a hater. Because I actually did some research on this. I did some pretty comprehensive research. I decided to go to PFF, and I decided to say, okay, let's take a look at PFF here. Let's take a look at their top 32 cornerbacks in the NFL. There's 32 teams, 32 cornerbacks. Okay, that's why I chose that number. I then said, of the top 32 cornerbacks, according to their coverage grades, how tall is each individual cornerback? I added them all up, and this is what I got. I looked at it, and I literally got numbers that ranged anywhere from as short as 5'9", as tall as 6'4", and anything in between. I then decided to take a look at the individualistic data, and this is what I got. Just so that way everybody knows, there were 4 out of 32 cornerbacks that are listed at 5'9". So that's right there what you got. For 5'9" cornerbacks out of the top 32, there's 4 of them. But I decided to say this. Okay, what is the average height in the NFL out of all cornerbacks, according to the data research, according to what you can find, according to somebody who actually did all this data and looked at all the cornerbacks that's in the NFL. This is what you get. The average height for all NFL cornerbacks as of right now is 6 foot dead even. If you take a look at the average height for the top 32 cornerbacks that I did according to PFF's coverage grade, it's 5'11" and a half. 5'11" and a half is how tall I am. Now, I then told myself this. I'm like, okay, average of the top 32 cornerbacks, which is going to adjust from year to year, whatever. That's 5'11" and a half. But that's only a half an inch difference from the average for all the NFL cornerbacks, which is at 6 foot. So let's understand something here. 6 foot is 3 inches taller than 5'9", and 5'11" and a half is 2.5 inches taller. That right there is already pretty significant because what you're talking about, I know 2.5 to 3 inches doesn't sound like a whole lot. But let me tell you something. When you're playing on a field and it literally comes down to a matter of inches, a matter of feet, it definitely makes a difference because that is literally the margin of error between victory and defeat. Because we've heard it so many times. The game of football is a matter of inches. So then I said, okay, 5'11" and a half is the average for the top 32 cornerbacks in the NFL, according to PFF. The average for all cornerbacks is 6 foot even. So then I said to myself, okay, what's the average for the top 32 wide receivers going off of the receiving grade for the same metric that PFF does? And then what's the average for all wide receivers in the NFL using the same database that I did for all the cornerbacks? For all wide receivers, it's 6 foot 1.5 inch. So 6 feet and a half inch is the average for all NFL wide receivers. But for the top wide receivers, you get an extra half inch at 6'1". Now, I'm going to say this. I know some people are going to be like, but David, this is subjective. You're not really putting apples to apples here. Here's what I'm going to say. I did say, however, that out of those 32 cornerbacks, 4 of them, like I said, were 5'9". Well, here's the thing. I know for a lot of people that I've had this conversation about with Mike Sainristil, they have been saying that, he could play outside corner, no problem. Well, here's the thing, folks. Of the 4 cornerbacks that are 5'9" that are considered top 32 cornerbacks, only 2 of them are actually considered outside cornerbacks. The other 2 are slot corners. So that right there tells me, top 32 cornerbacks, according to 2023, last year, only 6% are considered outside cornerbacks that are 5'9". 6%. We know how hard it is to get in the NFL just on its own merits. But to be a top cornerback at 5'9" and also be an outside cornerback at the same time, 6% in a league as highly competitive as the NFL. That's not very good odds, my friend. It just simply is not. And again, like I said, wide receivers are getting bigger and heavier and more physical and more fast every freaking year. So, let's consider this. Mike Sainristil is listed at 5'9" according to his measurements at the NFL Combine. And let's also consider this. He's like, 183, 184, 185 pounds? So he's not exactly the most bulky 5'9" either. Then you consider this. Mike Sainristil has only played cornerback for 2 years. Only for 2 years. Because prior to that, he was a wide receiver. And then he transitioned over to cornerback. So let's understand something here. This guy is still developing into what he's supposed to be as a cornerback. He's not even fully developed yet. So we have no idea how well he's going to play at the next level. And I'm sorry, let me put it out to you this way. I don't really want to take the time to try and figure out if he's going to be something at the next level. By the time you get to the NFL, you should already know if you're going to be able to play or not. And this guy's still figuring out if he can play the position. Not even let alone if he can play. Now, here's another argument that I've heard about Mike Sainristil. And this is one of those arguments that I had to really dig deep on this one. There have been people that have said, well, David, he can play outside corner. He was able to play against some of the top competition in the NCAA, and he shut them down. Really? Because I went back and I checked the 2 years that he was the cornerback at U of M. I'm going to just say this right now. No, I'm not taking anything away from U of M. I'm not. But let's just be realistically fair here. U of M has not really played a whole lot of top competition when it comes to the regular season before they got to the postseason. Because think about it here. How do you get into the postseason? In the NCAA, it's based upon rankings, which is based upon votes. Well, if your best competition in the regular season for most years for, the U of M Wolverines is maybe Iowa, which is like a middle-ranked team, and OSU, which they usually play always the last game of the year. And, well, let's be fair. When Jim Harbaugh was there near towards the end, they were killing OSU damn near every year. So I was like, okay, that right there already puts me in a pretty good spot to say, yeah, they haven't really played a whole lot of top competition in the regular season. But then people were like, but David, in the postseason, they were playing the best of the best. So how do you make that justifiable argument? How can you possibly say he didn't really play a lot of top competition in the postseason? I'm not saying that he didn't. But what I am going to say is that for a guy to be a lockdown corner, you have to make it almost impossible for offenses to move the ball against you, to score against you, or quarterbacks to even want to throw it your direction. So I decided to tell myself this. I said, let's take a look at Sainristil's postseason stats only, not regular season, postseason stats, because that's when he's playing the best players on the field. That's my opinion. And that's also based upon the opponents that they're playing in the regular season. Argue with me on that one all you want. But literally, if you take a look at 2022 and 2023, the top 3 opponents that Michigan played against was Iowa one year and OSU both years. Other than that, they really didn't play against anybody that was of noteworthiness. So I said, okay, let's take a look at Sainristil in the postseason for 2022 and 2023. Let's take a look at his stats. In both years, in 2022 and 2023, these were the stats that he gave up combined. He gave up 27 completions to 39 attempts, 69.2 completion percentage rate for 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions for an 86.7 passer rating. Now, here's the thing. The 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, I can live with that. The 86.7 passer rating, I can also live with that. The 69.2 completion percentage rate, I can't live with. Think about it. As a cornerback, you want to make sure you are as close to 60% or under as much as possible. But when you get into the best part of the year where you have to go against the top competition and you're letting up almost 70% of completion rate, that's a problem for me. Now, I know some other people are going to say, but David, you're not checking out the film. You're not seeing what this guy can do on the field. Oh, but yes, I am. Yes, I did. Yes, I have. Think about this, folks. I'm going to put some highlights up here. These come from highlight tapes. I'm going to show you why I think that the whole hype about Mike Sainristil is just a little overblown. Let's take a look at some of these throws here. Take a look at some of them. This one particular throw was against Washington, which obviously was the national championship game. Take a look at this throw from the quarterback, Penix. Have you noticed something? The ball is literally thrown into quadruple coverage. There's 2 wide receivers that are in the area. So what does that tell me? Michael Penix just threw the ball up for grabs. And if you take a look how the ball got to Sainristil, if he had dropped the pass, he would have been absolutely just embarrassed. The ball was thrown literally right to him. He would have been absolutely embarrassed had he dropped the ball. Now take a look at this next one. Again, you're going to see the exact same damn thing. The ball is thrown right to Sainristil. All he has to do is literally keep on the same trajectory path as the ball as it's going out towards the sideline, and he just has to get underneath it. He doesn't even have to do anything. The ball was so badly underthrown, he literally was just right there and off to the races. Same thing with this particular one. And this one's against MSU. The wide receiver goes outside on a wheel route, and the quarterback is trying to throw it on the backside shoulder instead of reading the wide receiver and knowing that he's supposed to be throwing it up further on the field. So what does Sainristil do? He just stops and he just waits for the ball to drop right into his lap. What's my whole point with these plays? My whole point with these plays is that Sainristil's not doing necessarily anything of great coverage. What's happening is these quarterbacks are throwing such bad passes, they're literally going right towards him. And there's one particular cornerback that I remember back in the NFL that had that happen to him, and everybody thought he was the greatest thing since sliced bread, a.k.a. Larry Brown in the Super Bowl against the Pittsburgh Steelers when, Neil O'Donnell threw 2 balls right to him. Everybody thought he was the greatest thing, and some people thought he might have even been better at the time than Deion Sanders, which I think that's a load of crock. But the point of the matter is that it's not like Sainristil is going out and giving expert dominating coverage all the time. And when he's making these interceptions, the quarterbacks 9 times out of 10 are just throwing bad passes to him. And it's like, dude, you would be almost, if you drop it, I have to question your ability to make catches at that point. I know cornerbacks should not have the same type of hands as wide receiver, but this is a guy that's a former wide receiver. If he's dropping passes, I'm going to start popping my eyebrow up a little bit. So when people want to tell me, oh, we need to go get Mike Sainristil at number 29. This would be a really great pick. Really? You think so? Let's consider the facts here, shall we? How well do you think Sainristil would do against the likes of DK Metcalf, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson? List goes on and on. These are guys that are easily 6'1", 6'2", 6'3", 6'4". These are guys that will literally be standing up and be like, how's the weather going on down there? That's literally what I see with this. And these are guys that are very, very physical, and they're very good at what they do. I'm sorry, I just don't see how a 5'9" corner who's literally only been in the cornerback position for 2 years, and really, when he goes up against the top competition in the postseason, he's not doing very well. And the only reason his numbers, in my opinion, look as good as they are is because the quarterbacks are throwing the ball right to him. That's my personal opinion. Again, my opinion is my opinion. I'm not stating it as, the 100% fact. But I'd be kind of hard-pressed for you to prove me wrong based upon the statistical evidence I've given, based upon the comparative analysis I've given as far as what the other sizes of cornerbacks in the NFL are, what the other sizes of wide receivers are, and based upon the fact that a lot of cornerbacks at 5'9" already aren't doing very well, and there's only 2 out of the top 32 that are considered in that top 32 that are at 5'9". My whole point is this. I do not want to spend a first-round draft pick on a guy that has a lot of odds stacked against him. I would much rather spend that on a pick of TJ Tampa or Kool-Aid McKinstry, not Mike Sainristil. I'm sorry. If he's still there at the top of the third round, sure, why the hell not? But the first round, second round, sorry, I'm just not interested. And I'm going to just say this. I can't say I don't think the Lions will be interested. I just hope they aren't interested because I don't think it'd be a good idea. But again, I'm just a podcaster. I'm not the GM. I'm not Brad Holmes. This is my personal opinion. You do with it what you will. But anyway, having said that, I'm going to end the episode and say thank you all for watching another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, highly encourage you all to watch the next episode. Also encourage you all to do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe. If by chance you subscribed in the past, you forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed and you not had a chance to do so, again, I highly encourage you all to subscribe. It helps out my channel. But I also encourage you all, after you subscribe, to make sure you put on that bell notification icon as well, so that way you never miss any more content that I push out. Also encourage you all to share this content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you can with everybody and anybody that you can. The more we can share it, the greater the channel spreads, the greater the channel grows. And with that being said, folks, I just hope you all have something that makes you happy. Hope you all have something that makes you smile. I do hope you enjoyed the content. And with that, hope you all had a happy Easter. God bless. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.